Okay, my goal is to estimate the square root of 37. Okay, now the way that I'm going to do that is I can use a diagonal, my multiplication chart. My perfect squares are here, right? So the square root of 36 is 6. The square root of 49 is 7. The square root of 37 is going to be in between, right, these two, the square root of 36 and the square root of 49. So the square root of 36 is 6, and the square root of 49 is 7. So this is going to be in between 6 and 7. And look, 36 is like way close, like 37 is really close to 36, right? So this is a number that's between 6 and 7, and it's really close to the 6. So I would estimate it to be 6.1. Okay, the square root of 80, let's see, which two numbers is this in between? It's in between 64 and 81, right? So the square root of 64 is 8, and the square root of 81 is 9. So if I square root this number, it's going to be in between 8 and 9. And this time, the 80 is really close to the 81. So if I take the square root, it's going to be really close to 9. So what's a number in between 8 and 9 that's closer to 9? 8.9 would be a good estimate here. Okay, square root of 30. Square root of 30 is going to be in between the square root of 25 and the square root of 36, right? 30 is between 25 and 36. The square root of 25 is 5. And the square root of 36 is 6. So if I take the square root of this number, right, it's going to be in between 5 and 6. Now, 30 is like maybe halfway between 25 and 36, right? It's kind of in the middle. So what's halfway between 5 and 6? 5.5. Okay, what I would recommend right now is that you pause the video and do this problem. And I would do that after each problem. But I'm just going to make it as one big video, but I would recommend pause, try this, and then press play again. Okay? So for square root of 72, now there's a short way to do it, but what I'm going to do is just go ahead and I'm going to fully factor. And I'll talk about the short way at the end, but I'm going to factor until I get to prime numbers. And when I get to a prime number, I'm circling. Okay, so square root of 72 is the same as square root of 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for doubles. So look, here's a double, and here's a double, and here, this one's a single. So I'm going to put this double in its own house, okay, and I'm going to put this double in its own house, and I'm going to put this single in its own house, right? And these are called radical signs. So I'm going to put this double in its own radical and its own radical. And the doubles actually simplify, and here's why. 2 times 2 is 4. Look, I'm going to write it. Now, I'm not saying you need to write this every time, but I want you to see it. 2 times 2 is 4, and the square root of 4 is just 2. So this whole, right, this whole thing just becomes the number 2, okay? This, 3 times 3 is 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. Okay, so notice, look, I don't have to write that square root of 9. Look, I'm going to write it, but you can just look and kind of do that part in your head. Now, look, I want to be really clear. This is not the number 2. This is like some horrible decimals, like 1.4 something, 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 right? This is not the number 2. It's the square root of 2. This is the number 2. Why? Because it was the square root of 4, and 4 is a perfect square. Okay, but now at the end, look, I was able to simplify the doubles, not the single. And then on the outside, I had 2 numbers, so we're just going to multiply them together. So if you end up with 2 numbers on the outside, or sometimes you'll end up with 2 singles, and then there's 2 numbers on the inside, in which case you can multiply those together as well. Okay. Again, what I would do is pause right now and do this problem, but I'm going to keep going. So here, I have numbers and variables. I'm going to start the same, which is I'm going to factor. And again, there's like a short way that you could do this, but the long way always works, so it's kind of nice in that way. Okay, 2 times 2 times 5 is 20. Now look, this x squared is x times x, and the y to the third is y times y times y. Again, I'm looking for doubles. Look, this is a single. Double, double, single. Okay. The double goes in its own house. This double goes in its own house. This double goes in its own house. And then look, the singles, the 5 and the y, those just go over here. These aren't going to simplify, okay? Remember, this is 2 times 2, that's 4. The square root of 4 is just 2, okay? Now, we don't know what this number x is, but let's just pretend for a second. Let's say it's a 7. Well, then 7 times 7 is 49, and the square root of 49 is 7. So whatever this number is, if I take it and I multiply it by itself, I square it and I square root it, it's just going to be x, right? Just like this all became just a 2, this all becomes just an x, this all becomes just a y, And then this is what doesn't simplify. We can't take the square root, and so it just stays inside the square root. Okay, again, go ahead and pause and try this problem. On this last problem, this 2a is on the outside, is being multiplied. Look, I'm going to bring it all the way down here so I don't forget it at the end, but then I'm just going to kind of ignore it, and I'm going to do this problem like I've been doing all along. It's just like the problem above. I have 5 times 5 times 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 A's and 2 B's. And again, I'm looking for doubles, like this is a single. I have a double A, and a single A, and a double B. Okay, so let's see what happens here. This goes in its own house. 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 And my singles that are left are just 2 and A. Okay, this becomes, right, 5 times 5 is 25. The square root of 25 is just the number 5. Whatever this is, this becomes just the letter A. Now look, this becomes another A. We don't write AA, right? If I want to write A times A, I write A squared. Then this becomes a B, and then this is the square root of 2A. Now look, I almost forgot. There's a 2A on the outside right here. So look, whatever here is here, we're multiplying this now by 2A. Look, I just brought it over here. Okay, now, notice this is not going to get touched, right? This is in the square root. There's nothing I can do with that. But over here, I can multiply. So 2 times 5 is 10. This is A times A, right? There was 2 A's right here and 1 here, so that's A to the third. And then B and 2A, okay? So notice you kind of ignore this part and then just multiply it again at the very end.